Hello and welcome. My name is Vineet Malhotra and you're watching NewsX World. We'll start with the top headlines of today. Well, India has decided to send a team to the United Nations Security Council's 1267 Sanctions Committee to designate the Resistance Front as a terror group. India has also released the names of Pakistani army personnel and police who attended a terrorist's funeral. US President Donald Trump has landed in Saudi Arabia, his first major diplomatic trip during his second term. The president was greeted on the tarmac by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ahead of visits to Qatar and UAE, aiming to secure new investment. Meanwhile, amidst heightened regional tensions, Iran's armed forces chief of staff Bagheri wants neighbors to stay neutral ahead of Trump's visit. Bagheri says any aggression against Tehran will lead to irreparable losses and damages for attackers. Chinese President Xi Jinping says China will commit credit lines of almost $10 billion to Latin American countries while slamming bullying and hegemonism as the CELAC Forum. She also announced plans to deepen ties at a time of bloc confrontation. Well, China's foreign ministry says that the responsibility of tackling the fentanyl crisis lies with the US. Tariffs had been imposed on China over the flow of fentanyl, though recent talks have seen a sharp reduction in levies, which stood at over 100% both ways. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has spoken with his European counterpart as Allied unity continues ahead of Russia-Ukraine peace talks. Zelensky says he will attend talks in Turkey on Thursday as Russia's Lavrov speaks with the Turkish foreign minister on peace. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, who is in prison at The Hague over alleged war crimes, has been elected as mayor of his home city. Vote counting continues after crucial midterm elections in the Philippines. Well, a man has been arrested in connection with the fires that have been reported at properties linked to UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Counter-terrorism police has been investigating the apparent arson incidents in North London. All right, we start with our top story. India is set to present evidence of Pakistan's terror links at the United Nations Security Council. A special team will attend this week's 1267 Sanctions Committee meeting to press for the designation of the Resistance Front, or TRF, as a global terror outfit. This comes after the April 22nd Pahalgam attack, which killed 26 civilians and sharply escalated tensions with Pakistan. India will submit new proof connecting TRF to the attack and exposing Pakistan's direct support to the group. The 1267 Committee, which targets entities linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, has seen Pakistan, with China's backing, repeatedly block actions against groups like the TRF. Pakistan, currently a non-permanent member of the Security Council, is under growing global scrutiny as India intensifies its diplomatic push to isolate Islamabad on the world stage. On the other hand, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his first address since the escalation, declared that India will not succumb to nuclear blackmail. He made it clear that terror and talks cannot go hand in hand and warned that India will no longer distinguish between terrorists and the states that sponsor them. Modi said that Operation Sindoor represents not just retaliation but a shift in India's national security posture, a clear signal that terrorism will be met with decisive and unyielding force. Joining us on the program to talk more about this is Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat. Ambassador Dayal, appreciate you joining us. Well, India is going to present its case when it comes to the 1267 committee, but the fact of the matter is that even if this one is banned, sir, Pakistan will come up with another proxy and another one after that. This is not going to be a permanent solution, sir.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There are so many Pakistan-based terror organizations which are already on the prescribed list by the 1267 Sanctions Committee of the UN Security Council. But what happens is that new organizations come up, or the old organizations change their name and still continue to operate. So Pakistani terror policies are such that they promote these organizations. So, of course, there will be a lot of possibilities of the TRF re-emerging in some way or the other. But nonetheless, the steps which India is taking to approach the UNSC 1267 Sanctions Committee and get the TRF proscribed as a terrorist organization, this is an important step, because what will happen is that we will present the latest evidence highlighting Pakistan's complicity in terrorism, and we will approach the 1267 Sanctions Committee to designate the Resistance Front or the TRF as a terrorist organization and impose sanctions and travel bans on its members. Now, if these sanctions and travel bans are imposed, that does place some restrictions on their movements and their ability to carry out terrorist activities. Some Pakistani terrorist organizations are already designated by the UN, and these include Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Lashkar-e-Jangvi. But the Pakistani ISI finds some way or another to have these organizations continue to operate. Now, the evidence which we will present to the UN 1267 committee will focus on the role of the TRF in the Pahalgam terror attack on April 22nd, in which 26 innocent civilians were killed. Now, what has happened is that the TRF has emerged on the terror scene as an offshoot of the LET. The LET has promoted this subsidiary outfit. It's an offshoot. And the TRF emerged after the government of India decided to do away with the special status of Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370 of the Constitution. Now, what has happened is that our National Investigating Agency has found that there are several terror cases linked to the TRF, and we have found that this organization, the TRF, is involved in the planning, killings, recruiting terrorists, and smuggling of weapons. So what has happened is that TRF has been involved in a whole series of terror attacks, and that is why it's very important to have it designated as a terrorist outfit by the UN Security Council's 1267 committee.
And Ambassador Dayal, of course, then there is the problem of China, which continues to block anything that India gets, tries to get passed. This is obviously a problem at the UN level. India, representing 1/5 of humanity on the globe, definitely needs a larger say when it comes to the UNSC ecosystem.
Yes, but you're right. The problem is China, because China is a permanent UNSC member and it has veto power. So in the past also, we have encountered difficulties which have been created by China. China supports Pakistan. China doesn't think that these terrorists should be proscribed because they work for the Pakistani ISI, and that suits China, because if they hurt India, that's exactly what China is happy with. So China has resisted efforts made by us in the past to have some terrorists or terrorist organizations placed on the list of the UN Security Council as banned or proscribed organizations. Now, Pakistan, of course, has been doing everything possible to shield the TRF, and it has till now managed to block the mention of this terror outfit's name in a UNSC statement which condemned the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack. This removing of the name of the TRF from the UN statement happened because China helped Pakistan. So there is a nexus of evil between Pakistan and China, and this gives cover and protection to these terrorist outfits. But nonetheless, our efforts continue, and we will present very strong evidence to the committee to show that there is a great need to ban these this terrorist organization, the TRF, and put severe restrictions on its members, which would include sanctions and travel restrictions.
Always a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much. Moving on, China has unveiled new credit lines and visa-free travel opportunities for Latin American countries in a fresh bid to deepen strategic and economic ties with the region. This announcement follows a high-profile summit in Beijing today, where leaders from Brazil, Colombia, Chile and other nations gathered for the China CELAC Forum, a key platform for cooperation between China and the community of Latin American and Caribbean states. Beijing's new credit offering, dominated by in yuan, is seen as part of its broader effort to internationalize its currency. It mirrors a similar move in 2015 when China pledged $20 billion in credit to support infrastructure investment across Latin America. Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed the summit with a strong message. He vowed to deepen ties with Latin America and the Caribbean while taking aim at what he called bullying and hegemonism. Widely interpreted as a swipe at the United States, Xi warned that there are no winners in trade wars and said that bullying and hegemony only lead to isolation. Let's in fact listen into what he said.
10年来，在双方精心培育下，中拉论坛已经从一棵稚嫩幼苗成长为挺拔的大树，我感到十分欣慰。中国同拉美和加勒比地区虽然相距遥远，但双方友好交往源远流长。面对地缘政治和阵营对抗、暗流涌动、单边主义、保护主义逆流增长，中方愿同拉方携手启动5大工程，共谋发展振兴，共建中拉命运共同体。
While in a major development, Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced that Colombia will join China's Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure and investment strategy led by Beijing. But not all voices were aligned. Brazil emphasized the need for caution, warning that Latin American nations should avoid becoming overly dependent on any foreign economic power as they pursue international partnerships. All right, Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung, China strategist, is joining us on the broadcast. Andrew, appreciate you being here. Well, China is obviously on a quest, on a mission, to align with the southern and Latin American states. How do you think this outreach is going to be perceived by the Americans?
Well, of course, the Trump administration touts its hegemony. On the very first day, Trump was in the White House. He wanted to take over Greenland. He wanted to take over Canada, the 51st state. He wants to take over the Panama Canal, and also rename the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, and harking back to the days of the Monroe Doctrine. In other words, regarding the whole of Americas, North America and South America, as America's backyard, as the fortress to make America great again, and also trying to impose rules of the jungle on other countries, using tariffs against allies and antagonists alike, against this hegemonism or unilateralism, which has rattled the world economy, upends the so-called rule-based order founded by the United States. China is now presenting a different world where countries can cooperate in spite of their differences, and also trying to provide areas for cooperation to make for a more inclusive world. Now, of course, the Latin America is a very important part of the global South. And China has been pivoting towards the global South, especially as a result of this total disruption of the world trade ecosystem by Trump's massive tariffs all over the place. And of course, the Latin America contributes more and more to the global growth. Now, as mentioned, the global South, because the global South, even the BRICS plus alone, the total economy is bigger than the G7. The whole world is governed by Western countries, and now the global South, in terms of the total economy, exceeds the global South. It reached the G7, which of course includes the United States. So the whole world is changing now, and China is presenting another side of the picture. And as a result of Trump's no-holds-barred tariffs and also the rules of the jungle imposed on other countries, I think that there is a great deal of rallying amongst the countries in the global South to form some sort of a solidarity, not in terms of a bloc, but closer relationship with China. And hence, this is the gist of President Xi's opening of this forum with Latin America, and also providing greater investments, offering avenues for cooperation like anti-terrorism, and also promoting technologies involving green energies and also 5G. So all these resonate with the developing world, who are, after all, struggling to grow their economy to make better lives for their people. Whereas that they're seeing that a lot of the countries are now seeing that they are being put under the thumb of President Trump's hegemonic rules of the jungle kind of behavior.
All right, Andrew, appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much for your time. Moving on, US President Donald Trump has landed in Saudi Arabia, marking the first stop of his 4-day tour of the Gulf. Fighter jets escorted Air Force One into Riyadh, where Trump was welcomed with a 21-gun salute and a royal reception by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This is Trump's first major foreign trip of his second term, and Riyadh has changed since his last visit in 2017. More openness, more investments, and fewer restrictions. Even American women at official meetings weren't required to wear headscarves, something unheard of back then. On the table, a potential $100 billion arms deal and major US-Saudi business partnerships. Trump will also address the Saudi-US Investment Forum later today, joined by VIPs including Elon Musk and executives from OpenAI and NVIDIA. But beyond trade and deals, Trump faces growing pressure over Gaza. Arab leaders want him to push Israel for a ceasefire, open aid corridors, and bring the remaining hostages home. Trump has said he wants the war to end, but questions remain over how much influence he's willing to use on this trip. Meanwhile, Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff met with Eden Alexander, a US-Israeli soldier recently freed after 19 months in Hamas captivity. The two spoke with Trump and Netanyahu by phone. Washington says it's committed to securing a full ceasefire and freeing every last hostage. All right, Martin Sa, international affairs expert, is with us on the broadcast. He's joining us all the way from Frankfurt. Martin, appreciate you being here. Well, like I said in my opening monologue, that it's not the same Saudi Arabia, but is it the same Donald Trump? That is exactly what the world needs to know when it comes to Israel and the relationship that they share with the Americans, because obviously the Saudis are concerned about this growing conflict.
Well, I think Donald Trump is still aligned with his principles about been in contact more with this more capitalist or free market countries such as Saudi Arabia or the Emirates, and he's doing his best for approaching these countries towards Israel, as he did before. He did the Abraham Accords between the Emirates and Israel, but now the situation is a little bit more complex. Right now, because of the war in Gaza, these type of countries are no longer putting their relations with Trump or the U.S. before their support towards the Palestinians, who now is more complex. Trump needs to decide whether his ambition for trade, for increasing his dominance, or not dominance, but his businesses in the Middle East are more important than his alliance with Israel. Israel and the U.S. they have been one of the most closer allies, and this is what is taking place right now.
Martin, do you think that the relationship between the Americans and the Saudis has changed over the last few decades? It's no longer about oil. It's all about influence and power. But of course, Donald Trump does get swayed, when he's treated this way by MBS.
I think the policy of Saudi Arabia will never change. I mean, I don't think they're gonna ally with the Chinese or Iran. I mean, their economy is based on making trade with the U.S. So I don't think their basic policy is gonna change. I think what is changing and what is not taken for granted is the Palestinian issue. Before the war, Saudi Arabia was about to approach Israel. The Palestinians were not on their focus, but after the war, it has been changing because of the casualties in Gaza. So I think the situation here is not their relationship with Trump. I think it's the same, it's stable, but the issue between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
All right. Martin, appreciate you joining us and giving us those insights. Well, that's all we have time for now. We will continue to bring more news and updates from around the world. Thank you for watching.